This is Resonance, a podcast for leaders that unpacks the power of song, silence, and strategy.
We believe that great leadership begins with deep listening, not just to others, but to the still small voice within.
It's not just about being a successful leader, it's about being soulfully aligned as well.
In a world moving fast, Resonance invites you to pause and reconnect with purpose, people, and possibility.
We'll dive into some cool stories, celebrate with friends, and dig deep into the music too. 'Cause song has a way of saying what words cannot alone.
So whether you're leading a business, a team, or just trying to lead your own life with more meaning, this is Resonance.
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 Hey folks, Steve Azar here with my pals, Mike, the Monk Guy Farrell, Randy Harrington, the smarter guys in the room for sure, but always grateful to spend time with them. Last episode we had was on gratitude, and that was something that really, that struck a nerve with me, reminded me of how grateful we should be. Today we're going to talk about discernment. This is a word that I didn't hear much of, and Mike and Randy spent a lot of time talking about it. They got excited when they started to talk about it, and I was like, okay, what am I missing here? But without me getting crazy, welcome to Resonance. Mike, why don't you take it from here to get us off and running?
All right. Well, hello, boys. How are you? This is Steve's favorite topic because he still is trying to figure out what the definition is. So we'll jump in and talk a little bit about it today. So discernment from a standpoint of leadership is the idea that we need to slow down to speed up. A lot of times leaders make decisions and they make them quickly. And sometimes when they make them, they're making them and they're not very well thought out. And so this idea of discernment comes actually out of an exercise called the spiritual exercises from St. Ignatius of Loyola, who created this whole process of spiritual discernment. And so the idea of discernment that I talk about is understanding that it is a process. Number one, it's not just taking a little bit longer to think about it. It's an actual process that you talk about. I have actually an 8-step process that I take people through to understand what this discernment looks like. But, we've talked on the show before about this idea of pausing. I've talked about the word statio, that the Benedictines use, and understanding that part of discernment is really this pause to take time, to slow down, to speed up. What do you think about that, Randy?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. So if we get a little geeky here and we go back and understand where the word came from, discernment actually means to separate, to take apart. And so to Mike's point, it is a thing you do. Discernment is something that happens. And I want to say, I'm not exactly sure when, but somewhere around 16 or 1700s, discernment started to mean to know by intellect. In other words, to know by working it out in your mind, as opposed to knowing by just seeing there's a big cow over there. Discernment means you're adding something else to it. Because there's a big cow over there, there must be something else related to it. But generally discernment is about taking things apart and understanding them. And usually that does take time. And so I think, Mike, you're on the right pace, on the right point when you say just slowing down a step and saying, hey, wait a minute. And, this is, I don't know, my father had a long seminar he put me through before I could go into a car dealership. He was like, okay, there's 71 things you need to know before you go into a car dealership. Here's the way they're going to try to get you every single time. And when I think back on his lessons, they almost always boiled down to slow the puppy down. Don't try to become blinded by that car you want to buy. Instead, start really taking apart the information and the offer and the deal and looking at it a lot more closely. So discernment at a classic level, Mike, I think is spot on the way you say it. And what I want to do with our conversation today is say, let's talk about that because it's the way we live in our lives.
Right.
But I also want to say that discernment is no longer an option because we are in a world of AI deep fakes. I cannot watch the news now without going, is that real? Is that true? Is that real? Is that true?
Yeah.
And so discernment is a capacity and a capability that is essential for not being taken advantage of or abused or lied to in any way. So it's something we all need to get our arms around and understand.
Right.
Is that feeling good to you, Steve? Is your tail wagging on that idea of discernment?
What was your definition of discernment? It was what? Two things you said?
To break it apart, to look at it.
Great. Work apart. Why don't we just say that instead of use that word discernment?
So, and
Although,
I think a great example of that, Steve, is going back to when you left the record label. You know, that
yeah,
wasn't a knee-jerk snap reaction that you did. You took time to really think about that. So talk a little bit about that process that you went through to make that determination.
I remember you were praying and drinking wine. That's what I remember.
yeah, yeah. That could have been many, many, many different instances. Now,
Steve
you know what?
discerns all the time.
Yeah, 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 you're right. You know, for me, looking back, I guess I did practice that pretty well. It couldn't be a quick decision. Leaving one of the biggest labels in the world. At that point, Mercury Records had merged into, or it was Vivendi owned it. A French guy owned it, company, and a guy there that wanted to sell Mercury. MCA, DreamWorks all came in under Universal Music Group's umbrella. And when that happened, we still had the same head of the label who was difficult with me. You know, we've talked about it. And I feel like I did spend quite a bit of time asking friends who had left big labels and who were doing their own thing, understanding how it worked. I remember talking to Al Bonetta, who was John Prine's manager, owned his label with him, Oh Boy Records. Always really good to me. He sat me down and he really went through what it was going to be like and how it could be a good thing, right? But he talked about the negative and the high. You were a dragon, you were a part of a dragon, right? Or a part of Goliath, and now you're about to be David. And you're going to have to slay the dragon. You're going to be competing against them because at the time I'd come off of mainstream radio with success, and I had to try to continue that level of play. So
Right.
I could
Right.
keep the buses rolling and the band rolling and everybody else I'm responsible for, and we played that game and we were pretty good at it. But the negative of that is when you're David, you have to know when to stop early or at least when to stop on time. If you go a week or 2 or 3 weeks later when you're promoting a record, it could be the difference in you making the money you would have made climbing the charts a handful of spots could not equal the amount that you could have made on tour. So you got to decide where is the breaking point, because I had all these people that I was responsible for, and they have people they were responsible for. So I felt an incredible burden at the time, and so I wanted to make sure that when I did it, that it was the right move. And I got to tell you, I enjoyed reaching out to the label and letting them know I was leaving. It was fun.
So
Well, I like that.
I'm going to just stop you there because what you have just done is described the first 3 steps of discernment. Okay.
Well, that's because I was playing. I knew that. No,
Yeah, he has them tattooed. He has them tattooed right here.
no. But explain that, please.
So that first step is intention. What is my intention? What is the decision that I have to make? And defining that. What is the decision that I have to make? The second step then is gathering information. And that's what you did. You talked to a lot of people. You talked about the good stuff, the bad stuff. And then the last one would have been that third step would have been seeking perspective. There you had your trusted person that you sat down with, and they laid it out so that you were able to seek perspective on the decision that you needed to make. So those were the first 3 steps of the discernment process.
Let me tell you guys something you don't know, but it was such a brief moment. It couldn't have been a month or 2 months. I did relocate to another label who we left immediately because they weren't capable of keeping up with what we needed to do and what I needed to do. So as soon as I signed, I got out because we realized they couldn't keep up. I mean, they weren't prepared to.
Sure.
I mean, it looked good in theory. And when you played golf with one of the guys, he sold you pretty well. But when we got in the meeting room and we actually talked about the amount of records that were going to be in stores, at this point, I was on the Bob Seger tour. We already had proof that we were selling a substantial amount of records in the arenas we were playing. And they were talking about putting less records in the entire country than we were selling in 4 nights in an arena. So at Best Buys back then, at Walmart's, that, and we realized that they weren't able to play. So then the whole time I was talking about doing my own thing, which I was prepared for to jump ship without thinking at that point. I knew that it was the thing to do.
Right. So again, you seek perspective, then you reflect on it. That's the 4th step. you reflected on what it is that you're going to do. And then the next step is really to weigh the options. So you weighed the options from a standpoint of, okay, maybe I go to this other label, or maybe I start my own. What is that? Next, you make sure it aligns with your values. And certainly the idea that it aligned with what you were already doing versus, something, this other label that couldn't deliver on what you wanted them to deliver on. It aligned with your values, and then at that point you begin to make that decision.
It's interesting. The biggest label, you wait your whole life to get there and have hits, and that was happening. And then you're stymied because they go up for sale. So you're stymied because they go up for sale. They undersold. No, wait, what am I trying to say? Well, I guess they both undersold. I mean, one, you being on the big label, you expected this big push once you proved that you could do the work and you could be the artist. And then they dropped the ball, and then the other label wasn't capable of getting there. I had a point to make, but it's fleeting sometimes in this mind of mine. I guess what I'm saying is both were two opposites of the spectrum. And I got to tell you something. When I went on my own, it was invigorating when I was in the studio. It was inspiring, but at the same time, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and it was a little bit scary.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I would hope so. If it wasn't scary, you probably weren't doing the right thing.
Right. Or you weren't awake. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this idea that Mike is getting to as it relates to going through a process is a really good thought to have just sort of in your pocket to go to, because what we're talking about, one of the other etymology pieces with discernment is to distinguish. And I think that might help you too, Steve, as you think about that word. That's where the dis comes from, distinguish, to break apart and to see it as something different or separate. I feel like, yeah, I think that's what you did do going through that process, was pull those things apart. But when we start talking about intention, for example, the very first step, that's often a really hard thing to do.
Right.
And so my daughter is now taking a new job, and she's going to go into a new culture, a new work culture, and they have sold her what it's going to be like. Oh, look at this amazing place, and look at what we can do, and look at what we're trying to do. And then she's going to come in there, and just like you with that new label, she's going to go, hopefully she's going to go, wow, they're doing all this and more. They were actually accurate with this. But there's going to be this weird period of time where she's going to be checking out the new company.
Right.
But of course, they're going to be checking her out too. They're going to be going, oh, we just hired this person, and she sounds like she's the best thing since sliced bread, but really, what is she bringing to the table? So my point here is to say discernment is kind of constantly flowing. And that makes this business of intention very difficult, because when you wake up in the middle of the night, you may go, wow, I'm not feeling very comfortable about this. Something's weird, but you may not know the problem you really need to be solving.
Right.
And how many times have we gone after the wrong target thinking, oh, this is why I feel frustrated, or this is why I don't think it's right. And you find out actually it's something very, very different.
Yeah.
So this is a big life skill.
Yeah. And I think that's the why that middle step is reflection, because before you ever make that decision, it's taking that time to reflect, to number one, make sure that the decision you're thinking about making is the right one. But number two, to your point, Randy, is to ask the right question. Am I asking the right question, or do I need to go back to step one and realize I need to ask a different question?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. That's what I was trying to get to, but not very well, is this idea that you may have to go back through those first three steps 3 or 4 times. It's not like it's just you're going to go down a tunnel and arrive at some wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I actually show it as a wheel, because
it's
constant. It constantly goes. This
Hey,
isn't
Steve, this Farrell guy is pretty
done with.
smart. I think you got to hang out with him. Yeah, he's got it going on.
We're on the island right now. All right, so let me just ask you guys, when you say you're going to slow down to speed up, you slow down to make sure you make the absolute best decision possible so your company can take off,
right,
and get into a new gear. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's it. And I will of course bring in a maxim from our good friends, the U.S. Navy SEALs, who have a phrase that I like very, very much. And that phrase is, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And so when they learn to shoot, they learn everything extraordinarily slowly. And as it relates to the way they move their body to withdraw their sidearm, where their sidearm is placed on their body, they might work through that for days. And then the initial movement of where their hand is going to go and how they draw the sidearm. And they may just do that one movement a long time to the point where you're insane. And then when they finally get to take it out and start dry firing, it's like, oh, that's the coolest thing ever because at least I get to pull the trigger. But it's a long, long time before they're actually shooting their gun. But what they figure out is after they learn this smooth operation and smooth operation in a team environment, they can go really fast. And then go really fast because they're no longer putting any cognitive energy to the mechanical operation of using the weapon. And one more quick story, just because I find it absolutely fascinating. There is a phrase called switchology, which they teach. And if you have an MP5 automatic weapon, right? Serious weapon, and SWAT teams carry them now, for example. But what the SEALs will tell you is you can't just spray an automatic weapon around like this. You can't just assign targeting like this, especially if it's a school shooting situation or something like that, where you've got one bad actor in the mix of lots of innocents. So there, what they teach you, and I actually watch these people do this. You have the weapon safe and down. You find the bad guy. You point the muzzle at the bad guy. You take the safety off. You put your finger in the trigger well. You depress the trigger. You dispatch the bad guy. You take your finger out of the trigger well. You put the safety back on, and then you lower it, and then you acquire the next target. So it's this so that you're not sweeping anywhere across. I just found that fascinating to see how much work went into that critical safety piece. So anyway, the point though is slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And the idea, it works, for example, I understand it works in golf, that you, by learning something, and this is that practice makes permanent thing, where if you learn it correctly and smoothly, everything works all the time. But if you're just kind of whacking at it and getting more frustrated and then you golf like me.
Well, Mike, if I can remember to tell myself this, because you go to the golf course and you get on a run for a while and then you don't, and you realize the little things that you're not doing and reminding yourself that really help you get into the swing of golf. So just for a brief second, you were a golf pro. So when I play my best golf, it's when I feel like I'm taking a month to take my backswing back. I get it set, and there's one Mississippi, and then I go. When I don't do that is when all sorts of things, come into play. Out of bounds, this and that, the mistakes you can make. But when I know I'm set at the top and I've taken a couple seconds to get there, I already know I'm going to hit a good shot. But getting yourself to do that and constantly over and over again is a very difficult thing to do. I mean, like your mind just forgets to even go there.
Yep. Well, and I think, you'll hear the pros all the time talk about being, having great tempo or great rhythm. I mean, we had a whole show on rhythm and this idea of being in rhythm. And I think that rhythm, that process, that flow, whatever you want to call it, also works when we talk about decision making and we talk about discernment. It's a flow. It happened and it takes practice. You don't just jump into discernment and, take yourself through all 8 of those steps and realize that, okay, now I got it. I don't ever have to think about it again. It takes time. And especially
we have a phrase. We have a phrase in business: due diligence.
Yes.
Due diligence is operationalized discernment.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Oh, you're going to go hire a new company to do a thing. Well, who are these people? What are their finances like? What's going on there? So it's a specific process that you go through, and discernment is exactly the same thing.
Yeah. And it's interesting though, how many leaders I've seen over the last 40 years that are kind of like Steve, your golf swing when it goes to heck. They lose the tempo, they lose the rhythm, they start doing things quickly. They start doing things from a standpoint of reaction versus proaction. And
bingo.
That's when they get in trouble. And it's no different with our golf swings. When I get fast, when I get quick, I know that trouble is lurking around the next fairway.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it gets contagious in a bad way. It can get contagious in a way. You can get in the zone and you can go for a while. But yeah, when things start going sideways, it's difficult to get yourself out of it, especially when you don't practice.
Right.
You can get yourself out of things when you're a little younger and you're really working at it and go, okay, I can overcome that double bogey. Things don't work out like that. So what happens in businesses when they got 18 holes to play, right? And to survive to the next round, or they do it, survive or die, right? And and they're looking at, and they can see the end, and the end could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. What gets them to pause and what gets them to slow down enough to make the right decision? I mean, like, is it, you see businesses going down all the time. So where are they going wrong? And where in the cycle of all this?
There's there's a lot of different angles to take on that very, very, very good question. But one of the things I see is people get trapped in their own paradigm. They have a belief about the way things ought and should be. They have a narrative about the way it is. And even more importantly, they have a narrative about who they are in that picture. So like when your golf swing starts going bad, I bet you it takes a millisecond after you shank the ball before you curse it.
Back that up real quick.
We never use that word.
I've got to go. I've got to go lay down. You can't use that word. It's not, you can't. I can't even erase that.
Whenever you hit some bad shot, then how's that?
What happened, Randy, is once you use that word once, you're going to have to use it 2 more times because they always come.
I believe.
I get it over there. It's like throw the salt over the shoulder.
Okay, I'm with you. I didn't realize that was a mojo thing. But yeah, so you hit the ball poorly, and the very first thing that would go through my mind is some kind of self-recrimination. You're a bad person, or oh, why did you do that? Or oh, that was a terrible thing. In other words, and that usually creates a one down. This is what Mike was just talking about, where you're on your heels. You've just put yourself on your own heels. You've just attacked yourself, and in the process, you have taken away or it made it more difficult to find that discernment for the next shot. So I think one of the first things you can do is really shut up that self-talk. You made a mistake, so let's figure it out, as opposed to, I'm a bad person. I must not have been practicing right or whatever, or I picked exactly the wrong time to do this. So the main piece to get you to stop is when you see the negative thing occur, you have to get scientific about it as opposed to getting emotional about it. You have to go, why did that happen? Well, maybe it was, okay, my backswing. All right, let's try. And so then now you're kind of looking forward to the next shot so you can see if you can fix it.
Yeah, and that's the slowing down part, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And if you're a business, and I've seen this a lot with restaurants, for example, they think they're going to have their restaurant be a certain thing in a certain way. And it's just, maybe it works for 2 months or 3 months, and then people kind of get over it. They're willing to pay that price for that meal the first time, but they're not going to pay it the second time. So there's all kinds of dynamics that are at play there. Maybe it's not the food, but it's the money. Maybe it's not the money, but it's the service. Maybe it's not the service, but it's the location. And you have to discern all of that. You have to be able to get right down to the fact. And candidly, a lot of this is because you're not listening to the customer. You're not truly paying attention to what these people are saying, or they're behaving in ways that should be screaming at you what the problem really is.
That is a very interesting thing you said, because I pay attention to restaurants we visit for the first time.
Yes.
And I can pretty much tell you, I've been wrong about one, but you can pretty much figure out, are they going to make it or not?
Yeah.
And so you're in there and you're going like, because one thing being brand new and you understand the growing pains. I get that. Okay, so I give them that, but it's from the randomness of the menus or the lack of profound hospitality, Mike.
Right.
It's lack of paying attention. It's this how slow things are going or how fast they're putting the food on. It's every little thing. And you're going like, oh my God, they're a train wreck already. How could they open up and be this way? And you want to pull for them because you want it to work, because you want this to be a thing that's going to stick around for everybody's sake. And you just already know, you go, they're doomed. I mean, like you walk out of there and they got to fix it quick, but they had all this time to move slow, right? And to set up. But what happens in the beginning of businesses, restaurants, whatever it is, when they get into something and they're not prepared to showcase it to the rest of the world?
Well, I think part of that is you've got to look at the leader. You've got to look at whether it's an entrepreneur or a CEO or the head chef or whatever. I think you have to look at the leader, because a lot of times what you see is, and Randy, you sort of alluded to this, it's the idea that the leader makes the decision because the leader knows all. And, the first step to really doing discernment is exercising humility.
Bingo.
It's really that idea that says, I don't know it all. I need to, and that's why you go gather information. That's why you listen to the customer. That's why you do all those things before you make that decision, because you're humble enough. You exercise humility enough to realize that you don't have all the answers, and there might be people that do have more answers. Benedict talks about it in the Rule of Benedict. He says sometimes the best information we can get are from the new and young monks because
Sure.
they don't have all the baggage that's attached to them. They haven't been in the monastery for 30 years. And so they can offer insights and ideas that the monks that have been there forever can't.
They're not tarnished. They're coming in
Exactly right.
new and shiny, and what comes that is this naivete that allows you to be able to, there's an innocence to it, and sometimes there's magic in innocence.
Right. I mean, think about little kids. I mean, I think about my grandkids and some of the stuff they say,
Yeah.
it's like, wow.
Brilliant. It's amazing because they're not using all the baggage, like you said, to make a decision. They're coming at it almost as a common sense sort of in your
Right.
mind. Oh, why wouldn't it just be this? Interesting.
And it can be a problem too, because we as humans don't like to say critical things to other humans. Typically, there are some people in the world who seem to love doing that, but
Yeah.
but most of us, if we go to a restaurant that's subpar or something's wrong with it, we just won't go back.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not gonna have a seminar with the waiter or waitress and say, here's what I didn't like about this, and here's blah blah blah. We just walk away and we never come back. And so one of the things I think that discernment requires is an openness to negative information, an openness to negative feedback, an openness to criticism. And it's the hardest thing in the world to do, to say, you can say you're open to it, but when you hear it, it's still,
Yeah.
and yet when I have employees or people around me that I come to love and trust, it's almost always because they've come to me and said, in some manner of speaking, you've got spinach in your teeth. Your fly is down. There's something I'm telling you right now. You don't know what you're presenting, and you need to fix that.
Yeah.
And I love it.
I've seen a number, excuse me, Randy, I've seen a number of shows on TV post-COVID about the food world, and where they had just started the restaurant thing, and at the wrong time in the universe, right?
Right.
And they had to figure out what to do to survive. And the things that they figured out, the ones that are still here today, it all goes back to great leadership. If you look
Right.
back, I mean, just watching who was leading and how they were leading, they all had that in common. They all had determination, and they all had fear, but at the same time, they somehow figured out a plan that took a lot more work than they were expecting. Even though the restaurant business, as we know, is about as much work as anybody can do because it's a full
Right.
day. It's never ending. You don't even have even if your day off, it's not a day off because you're preparing menus and all this. But what about the places that really come in with a bang and that seem to be doing everything right and they still are struggling? What do you do? How do you slow down to speed up? And when you think that everything you could possibly be doing is 100% perfect in your mind, what do you do there? Is that
Well, and again, I think that's what's in your mind. That's the problem.
Yeah.
The problem is the fact that you think you've got it all. You think you've got those answers, but in reality, if it's not working, obviously you don't have all the answers. And too many leaders aren't understanding of that fact, and they think they can just keep trying to fix it and keep trying to fix it and keep trying to fix it without getting input. The other, you talk about the restaurant after COVID where they all came together. Well, one of the reasons that happens is because that leader of that restaurant, whether it was an owner or a chef or whoever, put those people in a place or in an environment where they felt safe, where they felt like they could be able to give input, where they felt like if they said something, they weren't going to get fired, all of those kinds of things. And when you put employees, when you put your people, when you put your team members in a situation where they feel safe, it will breed trust and cooperation. Simon Sinek talks about this all the time. When we create a safe environment where people feel like they matter, now you will build trust, you will build cooperation, you will build the idea to gather information from your people simply because they feel like it's safe to do so.
I got two things to say there that you made some points that reverberated pretty clearly in my brain here. One was, in the music business, you cannot make a good record or a great record on a bad song. With a bad song. That's the foundation of it all. You got no shot. So move on. So you got to have that right. Secondly, the one thing that I noticed in the survival mode, the ones that worked, is it was 2 outs in the ninth inning. You know what I mean? 2 strikes on you, and you had you either struck out, went home, or you hit the grand slam, and that's what. And you were 3 runs down, bases loaded, bottom of the ninth. You had to hit a home run. That was it, or you had to keep it going. And they did that. The ones that did it. It's just amazing. But I think you cleared up a lot with me. It starts with the song, and when you think you know it all, and you think you've got a great song, and it's not even a good song, you got no shot to advance.
Right. That's
Yes.
exactly right.
So this idea of the song, let's pick that up because I think it's a good metaphor. Let's say you do have that perfect hit song. That's an amazing hit song that just everybody loves. I Don't Have to Be Meat on Monday, right? So there it is. So you've got that song, but you know what? You can't build a career on that song. And if you went in concert every single time and that's my first song and my last song are going to be I Don't Have to Be Meat on Monday, audience ain't going to be having it. And so one of the things I think that you can look for in organizations that are performing well is their ability to evolve while they're performing well. They have to have some capacity to change and learn. Otherwise, it's not going to go anywhere. And this is true of every great organization. If you look at Disney has evolved profoundly.
Absolutely.
And some people think they should be evolving a lot more than they are right now as the whole modality of theme parks and entertainment is changing. But the idea, of course, is you have to build in change. For strange reasons, have had a bizarre relationship with P.F. Chang's. And I think for Americanized Asian food, they're a fine place. You can usually go to one and feel pretty comfortable. But P.F. Chang's had a really big arc up. They did extremely well. They proliferated very well. And then over the last few years, COVID and all, you've seen them starting to tip down. But they are in the fight. What are they doing? They're changing their menu on a quarterly basis. They're putting out all kinds of new venue specials for date nights and group things and other things like that where you can go and bring your 5 friends, and for $75, you can all have these things and have just a nice little party before you go out and party or something like that. In other words, they're really listening to why people came into the restaurant, what they were looking for from that experience. And I don't know if you recall, but if you went into a P.F. Chang's, they did this little song and dance for years where they said, oh, well, we're going to mix our 3 sauces at the table for you. And that was kind of cool for about a year or two. But after a while, it was like, I don't need that little song and dance. And they figured it out. They stopped doing it. And they started adding more vegetables so they started just listening. And that, I think, is the thing. Can you evolve in this incremental way and keep changing it? I don't know if they're going to last, but I know that at least the one in our town has had consistent life rebreathed into it. We've always gone, it's not going to make it. And, it comes right on back. I've never gone to an Olive Garden, but I understand they're kind of doing the same thing.
Right.
Well, let me ask you about this. You got how many P.F. Chang's in the country? How many Olive Gardens? How many, whatever, okay? Unless you're Waffle House, I feel like they're invincible. That's all I have to say. Because I hear the same person say, hello, good evening, how are you doing? It's the same voice in every Waffle House across the country. I don't know how they do it. That's what I hear. And you can't tell me that there's not a brain surgeon cooking for you because you've got 1,000 things going and they never mess up your order. Okay, so.
And if you ever buy a waffle, I have never, ever had a waffle at a Waffle House.
Well, Al Del Greco, one of the great kickers in the NFL, used to get a waffle and then a waffle. I said, what are you doing? I have to have one for appetizer. I have to eat two waffles. He wanted them at times. He wanted one as an appetizer and one with his meal. But, but look at P.F. Chang's. What do you do about leaders underneath leaders? So you got people managing all these places, and I'm sure they have regional managers and all that. But how the heck can you have 200 people doing the exact same thing because they're supposed to be trained to do that? How do you, when they're so individual?
That's right. Panda Express just released an ad. I don't know why I'm on Chinese food today.
Are you hungry right now?
Yeah. But Panda Express has an ad out right now where you have this sort of wizened Asian guy standing over a big, beautiful wok filled with big, beautiful food. And then there are 4 people standing around watching him cook it. We're obviously employees, and he's shaking it and it's firing and shaking it and it's firing. And they're like, it's ready. And he's like, nope, it's not done. Shakes it a little more, shakes it a little more. Oh, it must be ready. Nope, it's not done. And he keeps saying, no, it's not done, until finally he says, now it's done. And that ad rang for me because what it says is, it's the problem you exactly described. We have a great recipe for this food at the top line level, but it requires cooking technique and skill to make good Asian food taste good.
Right.
And so here I am, wizened old sage Asian guy, teaching the magic of the walk to
Right.
these people and so it was a clear message to me. We're paying attention to how we do what
Right.
we do,
Right.
and that quality matters.
Chinese food, by the way, if all the three of us love to cook, to me, my most difficult task. I haven't quite got mine has a little bit of a Mexican flair to it. We don't know how. All my friends call it, they've named it Mexicanese. No matter what I do. It's like all my accents that I do come out Irish. I don't know, no matter what I'm doing.
I'm guilty there, man. I've made some Italian Mexican things myself. I don't know what we'll call that. Yeah.
Mike, what do you think?
Well, I think that obviously processes and systems are critical in that particular situation, because if you don't have replicable things that you're doing on each level of the organization, then it's virtually, I don't care how brilliant your recipe is. If you don't, it's kind of like, okay, here's what I've created. I've created this amazing cake, but go ahead and figure out how to do it yourself, and you'll come
Right.
up with something similar, and
Yeah.
that's the thing.
Bad discernment.
You've
Yes.
got to be able to replicate it, and I think, as in light of our conversation on discernment, that's part of the deal. Part of the deal is in that decision making. Can I make that decision? Can I go with that decision and have it at a point where I know that I can replicate it to those in the organization? Because
Yes.
the greatest leader in the world can make the greatest decision in the world, but if he or she can't communicate it and replicate it down the line, then it's not a very good decision.
There's one more chunk of material I'd like to lob into this before we wrap, and that is I talk a lot to young people, 20-ish, 20 to 30 years old, and these people are spinning. They're really looking for a place to land. They don't not sure, all the changes in the job market, everything's up and down. Oh my gosh. And they are struggling to discern the path that they should be on. And so I usually begin to Mike's point at the very, very beginning with, what is your intention? Is your intention to have a family? Is your intention to what is, so kind of having all of those big conversations. Well, it turns out there is a framework that is widely available and used all through Asia. It is called Ikigai, and it is spelled
Yep.
Ikigai.
And it's
And if you go look at
That's not a word. Y'all are
It's
making
three
this up
circles.
just to me. So word,
Yeah,
real
it's
word.
four circles, exactly.
Yep.
I
They're
don't
four
want
So
circles.
Ikigai says the following. It says, what are you passionate about? Really passionate. What do you care deeply about? What drives you as a human being? Second question, you fill that in. Second question, what are you really good at? What are you the person where if you're going to get picked for a team, they're going to pick you for that team because they know you're really good at what? What are your skill sets at? So what are you passionate about? What are you good at? Now, the other two circles go, what does the world really need now?
Right.
What is the world in demand?
Da, da, da.
Yeah. And they're also AI understanding or, fraud protection or housing development or whatever. Those are the places where medicine and medical stuff, those are all the places where there's a real need. And then the fourth circle is what will the world pay you for?
Right.
So the world may need all kind of things like love, but ain't nobody going to pay you for that, right? So it gets you right down to the place of, so if you fill out those four circles and you start moving them as best you can over the top of one another, where you can get the best quadruple bottom line possible, meaning, well, I'm passionate about this. I'm pretty good at it, but I think I could get better at it. It's a skill set I can learn. I know I can develop. Because I'm good at this, I think I can be good at that. I think I can actually get this as a job that somebody's going to pay me for. And guess what? It's going to help the environment, or it's going to help medicine, or it's going to help whatever. So I can actually have this kind of win. And for young people that are in this place where they're not able to discern what they ought to do, I highly recommend walking through the Ikigai process. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on Google. It's out there in a big way. You can read books on it. But it's a really simple self-diagnosis that walks you through. It's like your eightfold path, Mike, of
Right.
you could probably overlay your path on top of Ikigai and it would work.
Well, and there's actually another one that's very similar to that from Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. And he calls it the hedgehog concept.
Exactly.
What are you really good at? What are you passionate about? What's your economic driver that you can dominate the market in? And where those three circles converge is where you should be. Same philosophy that it does,
But the thing about both of them is it's an intentional thought
Exactly.
experiment you run with yourself. It's not something you can just think about passively. I want you, and I have people at my house that come and stay for a week or two, and I have them draw it on circles, and we look at it every day, and we move the circles around. We might start with, what does the world need now? Let's start there. To hell with you.
Right.
Let's talk about what the world needs and work backwards from that. But it doesn't matter where you start, but you can start. And that is kind of a methodology for discernment.
Yep.
Wow,
Yep.
that to me knocks it out of the park for me. That really helped me understand better. And the skin. I love that. I love both of y'all talking about the circle and the. I mean, well, that drives it home for me. So that really helped me understand it.
All
But it's
right.
like anything else. It's like, eating great and exercising. It's like easy to talk about.
Well, yeah, again, we can talk about it, but you got to practice it. If you don't
You got
practice
to do
it,
it.
Yeah.
you're going to get back to making snap decisions that sometimes aren't going to turn out very well. So,
Mike, you want to bring us home?
all right. Well, guys, today we've talked about discernment. We've talked about this idea of slowing down to speed up and what that might look like, and 8 different steps that leaders can use to use this process, to think through this process, and making sure that they've got enough humility to allow the questions to be asked, to allow the criticism to be given, to allow the process to happen. And they don't have all the answers. They're looking for answers. And in order to do that, they have to understand where their passion is, what's their economic driver, where can they be the best in the world. All of those things, those circles in Ikigai and the hedgehog concept that allows them to understand and how to make those good decisions. So with that, fellas, we're going to wrap up this episode of Resonance.
And I'm going to go get me some noodles
All right.
somewhere.
Yeah, you are. Check us out, resonantleader.com, everywhere you podcast, and we're on YouTube. Mike the Monk Guy Farrell, Randy Harrington, and myself, Steve Azar. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We're having a blast.
See you soon.
Thanks for listening to Resonance. Find us at resonanceleader.com.